Hello, everyone. Today we'll talk a little bit about Talmud as an introduction to the halacha of the third paragraph of the Shema. And one of the halachos that you first learn when you are in Yeshiva is that if you're going to ask a halachic question from a rabbi, you're not allowed to go shopping for a different answer. Um, it's it causes a lot of problems, disputes, anxiety, angst, stress, and so if you have a rabbi, then you ask that rabbi, and that's it. Um, my mother will be listening to this later. She jokingly once said that she's going to create a computer program where she puts in the question, she puts in the answer that she wants to get, and she will get the result from the computer of which rabbi to ask. I know it's a joke because my mother would never do such a thing, but this story is before there was computers, obviously, and Talmud tells us in Brachot that there was a story about an incident about a certain student. Rav Tzuriel told me that that student was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who came before Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua was the deputy Av Beit Din, so he was the second in command of the Sanhedrin. And he asked Rabbi Yoshua, is the davening of the Amida of Mariv Reshut or Chova? Is it optional or obligatory? And he said Reshut. Then later he went to Rabbi Gamliel, who was the head of the Sanhedrin, and asked him the same exact question, and Rabbi Gamliel said it is obligatory. We're not talking yet about the Shema, we're just talking about the Amida. So this student wrongfully said, but Rabbi Yeshua said it's optional, and he said, wait until all the other rabbis come into the study hall, and when they do, when they did, sorry, the student asked publicly this question, and Rabbi Gamliel, as the head of the Sanhedrin, answered, it is obligatory. And then Rabbi Gamliel, who knew that there was a problem, he says a rhetorical question: is there anybody who disagrees with me? And Rabbi Yeshua says no, and because he was trying to say you are the ultimate authority. But Rabbi Gamliel obviously wanted to get into it, and he says, "But I was told that you said to somebody that it was optional." And without a response, he told Rabbi Yoshua to stand on his legs, and he stood on his legs for the whole time of the class. And Rabbi Yoshua was standing, and Rabbi Gamliel was sitting until everybody told the Meturgeman, the person who was translating to Aramaic, stop, meaning stop translating what Rabbi Gamliel said, because it's not appropriate for us to make Rabbi Yeshua suffer, and so let's remove him from being the head of the study hall. So then they were asking, now who are going to point as the head of the study hall? And obviously we can't do Rabbi Yeshua because it's a conflict of interest. He's the one that was involved in this. If we appoint Rabbi Akiva, because he didn't have a father who was either Jewish or learned, we don't know for sure, but there is a tradition that Rabbi Akiva was a convert, a son of a convert. And then finally they decided to appoint Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah said, I'm going to go ask my wife. And she said to him, of course, you should take the honor. And he said, even though you don't look like you're old, you don't have white hairs. That night, according to the Midrash, he was 18 years old. That night, he got 18 streaks of white hair in his beard. And that's why it says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says in the Haggadah, I am like 70 years old, not I am 70 years old. So we just learned it this week with Rabbi Hertzfeld, so I just wanted to bring that as a background. And now we'll just show what the Haggadah says about that specific passage, and then we'll go into our halacha of is it right here? So I'm just Can't switch between sharing screens, unfortunately. Okay, so this is from the Agada that we read this week. Rabbi Elazar ben Elazar said, I am almost 70 years old, or I am like 70 years old, just like we just explained, and never have I merited to find the command to speak of the exodus from Egypt at night until Ben Zoma interpreted. It is written so that you remember the day of your exodus from Egypt all the days of your life. The days of your life would mean in the days, and the word all, which is technically extra, all the days of your life includes the nights. So from there we go now to just the halacha, which is now that we understand that Amida was the topic, but they appointed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah as the head of the yeshiva. Now we can understand more about the discussion, how it became that we have a commandment, a biblical commandment, to read the third paragraph of Shema, which mentions the exodus from Egypt. There's a lot of other passages in the Torah that mention the exodus of Egypt. Almost every positive commandment that says Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. On Kiddush, on Shabbos, we say Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. In the morning Kiddush, at night we say Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit. So all of this, our life is involved with always, always, always remembering the Exodus. The question is just, do we have to say this third passage, which talks about the commandments to remember the Exodus? So it is a biblical commandment to remember the Exodus every day, as it says in Deuteronomy. Therefore, you will remember the day you left Egypt all the days of your life. That's the same verse that we just quoted from Haggadah. The Chachamim learned from the word all, kol, that the mitzvah to remember the Exodus is performed both during the day and at night. This mitzvah can be fulfilled by reciting any verse that discusses leaving Egypt, or by mentioning the Exodus in one's own words. So you can just say, I am so happy that Hashem took us out of Egypt, or something like that, then technically it will be fulfilled. Just like benching after the meal, technically, if you just said, thank you, Hashem, for the wonderful food you gave me, you've done benching. But the rabbis did write certain words that we have to follow in order to do it right and not forget, because there's other things that we mentioned in the Birkat HaMazon. So that's why Rabbi Melamed explains this. The sages, the Chachamim, instituted reciting the Vayomer paragraph in order to fulfill the mitzvah of remembering the Exodus from Egypt. Therefore, there are two reasons why Vayomer was incorporated into the recital of the Shema. First, it mentions the mitzvah of tzitzit, that reminds us of all the mitzvot, and we just said yesterday that Vayam Shemor talks about the yoke of the commandments, meaning that we are accepting Hashem's commandments without any argument. And second, it talks about the exodus from Egypt. It is therefore customary to say Vayomer even at night, for although there is no need to mention the mitzvah of tzitzit then, because we don't wear tzitzit at night, we say it to remember the Exodus. And that's based on Brachot 14b. It's a very long discussion in the Talmud. And actually the Mishnah that I didn't show you starts with the words Mazkirin Yetziat Mitzrayim Ba'alot, meaning that's the law. Even though there was that argument between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua, according to the Chachamim, they understood that that was only about the Amidah, not about Kriyat Shema. And so the conclusion, based on Ben Zomar's teaching, is that we do say the third paragraph. And that's why we always mention it in the Haggadah, because of all this background. Last but not least, there's a difference between the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema and the mitzvah of remembering the Exodus from Egypt. The mitzvah of Kriyat Shema can only be fulfilled within the first 3 hours of the day, because that is the time we wake up, whereas the daytime mitzvah of remembering the Exodus can be performed throughout the entire day. And so he's just going to give two restrictions. However, following the enactment of the Chachamim, we fulfill the mitzvah of remembering the Exodus with the recital of Shema. And if the time to say Shema has passed, the person can remember the Exodus from Egypt by reciting the brachot of Emet V'Yatziv, because it also talks about the Exodus. We end with Ga'al Yisrael, which is talking about coming out of Egypt. If 4 hours have passed, which is also the time for the Amidah, one may fulfill the mitzvah by saying the Vayomer paragraph or by remembering the Exodus in another way. So we are very lenient, but because this doesn't have a specific time, it just says Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life. then really it just we have to say it at least once. And the B'shach B'chav Kumecha, which we talked about yesterday in terms of the first two paragraphs of Shema, do not apply to the third one because the third one talks about tzitzit, which is only during the day. So I hope I explained it well, but we'll open it up for questions. I'll just stop the recording.